The new pressure is creating what the pressure creates. Need, create, which is new creativity, new genius, a new language, a new civilization, a new economy, a new politics. All of this is just a training to start to kind of widen the experience, so you understand that this world needs you so bad, so steadfast. You want to, you made it into this room because you have a destiny to be a leader of this age. Good something to you. Good day to you wherever you are out in the world. And we're here at Rama Institute for Applied Yogic Science and Technology, Venice, California. And I'm really happy to be here with some incredible entrepreneurs and women. I wanted to talk, I specifically kind of envisioned this panel to really talk about businesses that are for-profit in different sectors, that are for-profit businesses, but that have the kind of inborn intelligence of socially forward entrepreneurship, and I think this is really the wave of the future. Not that the nonprofit sector isn't important and also changing in so many ways, but I wanted to specifically talk about that we can make money, we can create amazing experiences and products, and at the same time have a lot of kind of socially forward culture and programming and best practices in our businesses. So I'm really happy to be here with I'm going to intro them, and then we're just going to get going, because I don't know if you guys saw. I was on a panel recently, and she read the MC read like every single person's whole bio, and it was like. It was really hard. It was hard for everybody, and I don't want to put you through that pain. So I just want to get right to it, and then whatever feels relevant, you guys are going to talk about. But I'm here with a dear friend of mine and sister Ty Stikoloris, who is the founder of Friends at Work, and next to her Ferriss, who is a new friend. Ferriss Mason. Stylist, producer, and co-founder of Come Up LA, and I've been watching you guys on social. I'm just really impressed with what you're doing. And then Rebecca Underdown, founder of Veridatta skincare, and I'm really happy you're here as well, Rebecca, because you have a different kind of sector in terms of product, which I do think is a different conversation. It's like creating experience, creating product, and being in entertainment industry. These are all sorts of. I'm in the wellness industry, and there's obviously crossover for all of us in those realms. So I think there'll be kind of a different perspective. So really, really happy that all of you are here. Okay, so I would just love to start with your kind of when you created what you're working on now, which we're all Renaissance women. So obviously you're going to be creating and recreating these things. But in the current version, what was in your heart and your mind in terms of creating something that you felt was really going to benefit the community and benefit the people that are touched by whatever you're making, or whatever kind of art you're making, or experience, or product. So just want to kind of hear your creative process in that, and we'll just start with you, Ty.
Well, I started my company, Friends at Work, about 4 years ago, after having been in the music business as a manager for about 15 years. And in the music business, there's not a ton of women, and I was lucky enough to work with John Legend as his manager when I was just getting started, because John and I went to college together, we sang together, and we'd always been thinking about if we could ever make it as musicians, how would we change the world? Like, what would we do to leverage our platform to make good in the world, and he's a nerd, so he was constantly giving me books like The End of Poverty, or, we were traveling the world trying to figure out on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what did we want to try to attack? And finally, when I started my own company, it was kind of radical. I had a lot of the big managers say, you're not going to be able to do it on your own. John will leave you when he doesn't have a hit, and you'll be all on your own. There's like these few men at the top that it's like if you're either with them or you're never going to make it. And I had been through different incarnations of trying to find leaders in the music business to team up with and go under and like learn from, and it just wasn't there. And I was like, I have to do this myself. And when we did it, one of my, we spent a lot of time on mission and what do we stand for? And Friends at Work, as the name for a company, was, some people were like, ha, that's so silly. Why would you do that? And I was like, I grew up in the Quaker Friends tradition in Philadelphia. And so the light within and the lack of hierarchy and the idea of creating things with consensus, it was just part of my DNA. It's what I've been practicing since kindergarten. And the concern for the community is really woven into that too. So, it's kind of radical to say, I'm going to start a company and we're only going to sign artists that want to, really leverage their platform to make the world a better place. I'm not interested in just getting you pop hits. I want to know, what are you going to do with your power? And then how are we going to weave that in every single day to what you do? And it was a decision we made, and then we started the company and we've stuck with it, and it's been, I think now it's really popular in the music business. Like Guy Oseary hired a head of social impact, and so did Scooter Braun. And I'm really proud of all of us for like getting to that point eventually. But, for me, it was like I didn't want to do it unless it had a bigger purpose and a bigger aim. So
beautiful. I didn't know we had the Quaker connection.
Oh, I didn't know we had that.
Yeah, I had I was talking about the Quaker commune. I had some years on. That's cool. But it's real. I mean, that's it's not as well known on the kind of West Coast but it's a really deep kind of golden rule type of community. Beautiful. Thank you for showing. And then, of course, I always say the culture changers and the trailblazers. It's like, how long are you willing to hold the posture in order to then the culture starts to look to you? And it may not happen in your lifetime. I mean, that's the thing. You have to. It's wonderful when it does. Yeah. It's such a wonderful moment, but you have to be ready for it not to happen in your lifetime, and then ask yourself, how long are you willing to do it? So it's beautiful to see it changing, and you being a big part of that. So, Ferriss.
Well, hello. First, I'll just tell you a little bit about like what Come Up LA is. So, Come Up LA is a pop-up marketplace that caters to an all-Black vendors. So our entire community inside of Come Up, all of our vendors are Black, all of our DJs are Black, all of our participants are Black. And it's not about excluding anyone, but it's more about building up my community. The Black community has, for a long time, and still continues to struggle with working with each other, helping to generate wealth in our communities. It's been something that has been hindered, for hundreds of years. We all know where that came from. And so for me, when my partner, when he first came to me with the idea, we were like, okay, cool, sounds good. So we would just sit in my living room and just try to figure out how we do this. I myself I'm an empath, so I feel for people often. Sometimes I wish I didn't. Yeah. But I've always done things, or when I do things or put on things throughout the years, I always want to include my friends, include people in my community that are doing really awesome things, and try to help build them up. And whether that will immediately increase monetarily or not, that's not the reason why I do any of the things that I do, because that will come as long as you're dedicated and you're positive and you actually portray and are the things that you say you are. So, so basically Come Up is just like a big group of creatives, entrepreneurs that want to grow, want to work with each other, and just really want to build up our community to a place that other communities share, a place that other communities share these values of, working together, growing together, and also keeping our money within our community. The Black community is one of the very few communities, our money goes in and out of our community in an hour. There are other communities where the money stays in for a week or for longer or more, and people are willing and willing to work with each other. Being a Black or Indigenous or original person myself, there are stigmatas we have against ourselves, where, they're so, black businesses are unprofessional, Black businesses are this, or someone always wants a discount, or it's just all these things that aren't really viable to helping build a community structured upon love and support. And so that's really what Come Up is about. And through my journey of myself and my journey in being in LA, I've always been consistent to doing things that are in alignment with who I am as a person. Because I don't think there's anything that, for me, that I can do to help anyone else if what I'm doing is not authentic and true. And it may not, as I stated already, it may not lead me to like making the most money, or maybe it will, who knows. But the event, we've been doing the event just since last year. We're coming up on our 6th one in a couple weeks, and the amount of outpouring of love and support and how much our community need it is amazing. Like, it's really, really amazing. And one of the biggest things that has filled my heart is that I'm like able to help my friends grow their businesses. I'm able to grow my business and, you know, walk clearly in my alignment. And also, there are elders, which are very important to me, you know, that elders that appreciate the work or the place that Come Up is bringing for everyone.
I talk a lot about this, that really to create any kind of social or kind of psychological or advancement in a community or civilization, it has to be an economic revolution. In any revolution that has happened on this planet has had an economic kind of keystone in terms of really understanding how and why and where we spend our money. So it's one of the reasons why I really appreciate what you're doing and think it's really important. So thank you for being here. Rebecca.
Hi. So I started Veridatta in 2009. I was getting acne and wrinkles at the same time, and I was in acupuncture school, so I was learning a lot about Eastern medicine, and I started kind of trying out skincare products, and the organic sector at that point in time was extremely just basic. You know, lavender this, and that was about it. And then I was using anti-aging skincare, like the standard. I won't do any brands, but I started to notice a cloudiness to my skin. So there I was, acne and cloudy skin. I didn't know what to do. And I'd say it kind of started out of a little bit of anger because I had a real pet peeve with the advertising agencies of like proclaiming this, you know, anti-aging, like, oh, and it's really complicated, like you need 1,000 products. And I just kind of got really angry, and a mantra came into my head. And it was, I am going to create the world's most powerful organic anti-aging night cream I possibly can. And it was constant, and I didn't understand why. I just was there. So I woke up at 5:30 in the morning because my ex-husband was also getting up. So I was like, so I started developing it, and one product that was, so I created the night cream and started selling that. Was really happy about it, but then I realized I can't really go that far with one product. So let me make the other ones that everyone's, you know, asking for. So I basically hit out for about 5 years developing the whole line. And the whole purpose of the line was to, a lot of people ask me, they're like, what's your special ingredient? And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. That's so like United States thinking, like only celery. And I'm like, no. So, sorry, I love celery.
I
love celery.
I mean, them fighting words around.
The funny thing is I'm highly allergic to celery, so I think the whole thing, I'm like, so the way the line works is it increases your body's ability or your cell's ability to detoxify. So just like with yoga, you want to breathe, right? You have to think about skin as being a passage of gases. So if you don't have good gas passage, you're not really going to have great skin. That was the reason for the cloudiness. You put chemicals on the skin, and it's just like, bleh, and it just sits there, so you just want to clean it out. Anyways, so that was the first like 5 years, and then in 2014, when I finally launched the products, that kind of like brings me into where I am today, where I feel kind of really connected to the experience aspect, which is the tagline that we came out with. Thank you, Becca Gunther. She was my creative director at the time, and I'm really grateful for her. It is, you are enough. And at the time, I could have just mic dropped it. Everyone was like, oh, like 2014, that was pretty radical. Nowadays, not that radical. Everyone's pretty much used to like, yeah, I know I'm enough. I know.
Now I want better skin.
Yeah. But the feeling behind it, I think almost, I don't know which one's more passionate, whether it's the actual science of the skincare or the messaging, because the problem I have, again, the anger is, and I like the anger because it keeps me going every day, which is the beauty industry constantly telling women, you are not enough and you need this. Like, it's always been that way. That's how advertising works. And I just think we're stepping into a new place where it's like, no, actually, empower the user and have the user have an experience where every time she reaches for her product, she's like, oh my God. I want everyone to feel that way when they do their skincare routine, because most of the time people run away from me when I see them in the supermarket because they think that they're like, oh, I haven't washed my face in 3 days. And they run, and because a lot of times, I'm serious. When I moved back home for a little bit, I was like, oh God, I have no friends here. But a lot of times when people are talking about their skin, they get very self-conscious and very all of a sudden they they do this to me, and I'm like, yo, whatever you're doing, it's great, But let's add to it. But don't feel insecure, because skin is such a place of insecurity.
Yeah.
And myself included. I know what it feels like to have a breakout right before a live Rama TV thing. I know what that feels like. But, I just think that skin's a really great place to start the conversation of empowerment. Color, we have a sunscreen and it's tinted, and I love talking about color all day long, just because it's color. Yep, this white tinted zinc oxide doesn't go on your skin. You need this color,
Awesome. Good. I love the idea that you created the Pond's night cream, the organic Pond's night cream for the Aquarian age. That's what drove you. But also, anytime we're in the kind of business of beauty, this is a huge unpacking of all sorts of issues. So, I think that I've seen you at work when you're helping women to do this, and it's a very sensitive area for a variety of reasons. Also, in the yogic science, skin is really about our connection to our emotions and how we're metabolizing our emotional bodies and what that kind of looks like and how that feels. So, okay, so I want to talk about what kind of sacrifices you feel like you have to make for the bottom line in order to keep yourself in integrity around kind of your mission or some of the things that you're trying to push through the culture or through consciousness of what you're building. I do think that that's obviously one of the reasons why it seems like, and this is going to die very soon. This is I was speaking to a bunch of kind of more old school wellness and spa execs, and I was saying to them that their clientele and their employees all are becoming so much more sophisticated, and the demands for social responsibility are going to become so much more in terms of both the culture inside the company and also just the kind of environmental responsibility, all of these things. The demand of both the clientele and the employees that you're hiring is becoming that's going to basically change the face of corporate the corporate kind of culture. But as being on the forefront of this as small business owners and as on the forefront of different cultural and conversations, there are sacrifices that have to be made, and I just want to kind of hear whether it's like a sacrifice on a daily basis of money to integrity, or whether it's something that when you're working with a mission-based business, how that kind of comes in your life.
Well, it's so interesting. I've been having deep conversations lately with a lot of activists, and then because we're creating more of a management company for activists, not just musicians. There's so many people out there working day in and day out on really important things, and to have the sustainability, the endurance, to be able to get through, it's very hard fiscally for a lot of these people, because we have this old school mentality of either for profit, which compromises on everything, or nonprofit, which is so high integrity and good. And this is just a wrong assumption. It's also a sort of our democracy and all sorts of wrong assumptions on our economic model, like trickle down, all these things that we've, and I'm a finance background and econ major, and because my immigrant father was like, you can't be a singer and an artist, you've got to know how the economy works. And so I got a master's in that, and so much of what we were taught at Wharton Business School was it's just faulty. It's just faulty assumptions. It's based on this notion of this post-communist Cold War thing that like anything that's sort of socialist minded is a slippery slope into a failed model of communism. As if no one's capable of a gray middle ground, which is just like, so we're evolving into this, there's the thesis, the antithesis, and we're evolving into the synthesis right now. And I'm seeing this with activism models. So we're building an agency, a management team for activists, and we want those activists to get rich. We want them to have book deals, and that doesn't mean they have to compromise their integrity. Right. It means that they will have more power, they will live longer, they will be more successful, they can, and we're gonna I think companies need to be regulated, and I think all of our processes need to have some metrics for success and regulation on them, and boards and teams that can check each other, so that while we're raising up a cohort of incredible activists, radical thinkers, that we can also go like, hey, your ego, the fame, the TED Talk, like changed you fundamentally. Like we noticed this. Now we're gonna help you. Like there's good parts to that and there's bad parts to that. And so you have to have it as a community that's checking each other with some good, healthy regulation. And this is, I've been taking all your classes online about endurance and how to go the distance. Because I think if we're going to raise up the civil rights leaders of our time, we have to do it together. A lot of them have to make money. And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be this purist saint in order, like Brian Stevenson, I think of him as like the purist saint. He wrote a book called Just Mercy. You couldn't get him to, but like how is he going to survive? How do these great leaders of our time get to the end of their work with, it'd be nice if they could have a mortgage and a house and some sustainability. Now Brian is sustainable and he's raised $50 million for things that he's done. So he's got that down. But the young people, I think they're confused about this. They're like, am I allowed to think about myself and think about others? And so I think we need an education model for that, and business models for that. And a lot of these people need managers. They need an infrastructure. They need a social media team. They need creative people. They need film and television. They need production. I mean, this is what I have about 35 people in my company, and this is what we do for musicians. This is what we do for an astronaut named Katie Coleman. And now we're going to expand it to bring on 10 different sort of activists every couple years and have cohorts that teach each other. They pass down the knowledge. They all continue to evolve together so that we can create a space for that.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's so.
I need your help
That's
on it.
I'm so into that.
And anybody else who wants to help.
Yeah, that's revolutionary and very and really because I was talking to a woman who works on the front lines in different war zones. She works for the UN, and she was just saying the amount of burnout that happens for people who, the intention is good, the heart's in the right place, and then they get to these places and they're blowing off steam in really destructive ways, and it's just it's intense, the amount of burnout, and then also how that is destructive in their own self-esteem and in the cognitive kind of dissonance between what they want to do as a trailblazer and a social change maker, and really they're trying to put their money where their mouth is, and they don't have any infrastructure to support it. So I think it's an
unmet need in a big way.
It's a huge unmet need.
We're seeing it again and again with the kids out of Parkland, Black Lives Matter, like so many good friends of ours. They come to me and they're like, I need a manager. And I was like, I need to figure out how to make sure that our infrastructure can support you. So we're doing it with like Michael Skolnick and some of these other really great people that have been advising activists for a while, but we got to build the infrastructure together, and then we need the training. So I want to put them all into a lot of what you're teaching and whatever else that they need. There's a lot of alcoholism, there's a lot of drug, there's a lot of sickness that goes along with the type of personality that's day in and day out on the front lines, which is why I've seen a lot of criminal justice leaders that I know also have really dark sides, and that can sour the issue if they're not working and looking at the shadow self.
Yeah.
So you can have a whole movement that's built on like one person who's so iconic and wonderful and teaching everybody and is the best TED Talk, but behind the scenes they're like sexual, just terrible shit. And because they're not capable, and they've been in such like a hard traumatic space that they're traumatized.
Yeah.
So it's a lot for us to work on together,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
but we can.
It's a beautiful sector and has never really, never been done before.
Never been
it's
done
very,
before. I don't
it's
think so.
very, I don't think,
Yeah.
I've never heard of
Not that I've
anything.
seen.
I mean, that's kind of why this woman from the UN approached me, was like, do you have an idea of how we can change this? Because it really is, I think, a prolific issue. Yeah. All right, sacrifices along the way of creating something that may not, the bottom line may not be the only ends to means.
Well, a large sacrifice for me is really having to release my ego when dealing with vendors, participants, attendees. We live in a time where everybody wants an answer now, and they feel that they're of the most important person thing at the moment. And also, so our events usually have about 50 vendors. So our team is consistent of myself and my partner, and I do a bulk of the work. So I get lots of, requests, questions, and a lot of them, sometimes they don't make sense to me, or I'm like, why don't you know this, in my head.
Right.
But I'm like, everyone doesn't have the same sort of background as I do. Like, I have a business degree. I've worked in accounting offices. I work in a business. And I still work right now. I work a full-time job. I work at a business management firm.
Which is a sacrifice unto itself when you're building something. Yeah.
Believe me.
Yeah.
And I moved out here. I used to work at an engineering firm, a startup company that actually started the driving cars. I worked at Google, but I left there, and people think that was crazy. But like, that wasn't what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I have a strong background in like business things, but I'm also creative. Every creative doesn't have the understanding of business.
Yeah.
They don't understand like, oh, my website and my Instagram and my email should all be the same. Or I should have a website that at least works. It might not have to be beautiful, but at least works. So it's just required me to have a lot of patience, and also realize that there is a need, and that's something that we also want to do outside of just providing a space for people to like sell their items, meet people, but create workshops where like can educate people on just simple steps to help your business flourish. And because in the end, that's the goal. It's just to help everyone. It's not to tell someone they're less than or that their product isn't great, because everyone believes in what they do. That's why they share it, or that's why they want to sell it. That's why they put it out there. So you have to value that. And for me, it's just really like having to take a step back sometimes before I answer a question or before I respond to someone, instead of just using my immediate like, whatever, like, why don't you know this, or this is easy, or why didn't you read this, or do that. I've had to take many extra steps and like making sure people understand where I'm coming from. And, I have a lot of, often people are like, well, I sent an email this day, or I did this, and I'm like, okay, thank you. I appreciate you reaching out. Please have some patience. And also extending the same patience. So those have just been things that right now, and the bulk of it, that have been a sacrifice that I've had to make. And also like sleeping.
Sleeping.
And,
the big sacrifice.
Time with, time to, hang out or do other things. I'm like, no, I got to do this. I got to work on this. I got to get this done. And, people are relying on me. And that's also a big part of it. Like, staying true to my word, because I want others to stay true to their word as well. So I have to reflect what I want.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something I talk about a lot is that the jargon and kind of business, the way that business has been done and the way that it's been talked about and the way that it's been structured in the system of patriarchy and this time that we've come from is completely basically to keep the good old boys club intact. Therefore, these learning and how to kind of basically penetrate through some of the ways that these things have been structured to basically keep you out is a huge service to any entrepreneur and anyone who has an idea and anyone who's actually executing an idea that they had. I mean, this is the win. Like everything else from there is, it may not be received the way you wanted it to be received. You may not make the kind of money you wanted to, but if you have executed on an idea that you had, I mean, this is only a very small of the percentage of the people on the planet have actually done that. So it's really, it's a powerful, you've already, I mean, you've won, but I think that there's a lot of kind of ways that things are structured that are meant to keep people out of being able to prosper. So it's thank you for doing what you're doing. Losing some sleep over it. We all understand. Losing a lot of sleep over here. Rebecca, give us some sacrifice.
Sacrifice. So I'd say the thing that causes the biggest sacrifices, it's the integrity of the product.
Yeah.
So back when I started, I imagined pressing click, order, send, right? Like that's being manufactured, we're great. So I spent a couple years trying to replicate the formulas that I did. And when it came down to it, and after like great negotiations with the scientists, which by the way, you know, I really have a lot of respect for chemicals.
Yeah.
They're there for a reason. Like they're good. It's just, they don't really do what I want the skin to do. So at the end of the day, you know, I was like, man, I can't do it this way. And that was a serious coming to Jesus moment because I really was like, oh my God, I have to get a big facility and like run this whole thing. Oh God. So I still do that. Yeah. And because of that, for this particular line, if you will, there will be another line, but this particular line, it's handmade. Like that's like a lot of female power. Yeah. And because of that, we can't go into 1 billion stores. And because of that, I don't really look that great to venture capitalists because I don't have huge numbers. The way skincare, the way beauty works is numbers. That's it. You know, how much can you fulfill? How quickly are you doing it? And I don't, you know, I'm small because it's expensive to make, it's expensive to buy, and people need to also understand the process. So I'd say the sacrifices, I'm glad I didn't know about them in the beginning. Yeah. But you know, I'm very happy about it just because at the end of the day I go, well, my products work better than yours, and that's it. End of sentence. Like, yeah,
that's the bottom line.
I'm like, that's fine. I'm tired too, but that's fine.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think this is an interesting, because there are people out there who want to create a product, and it is a different thing than when you're working with people, which is a whole nother set of issues, or you're creating an experience, which is a whole nother set of issues. But creating product is a very specific set of issues. Especially, I have a friend who has now taken her business, you know, much bigger and took investment in, but she has product, right? And the issues that you face around creating a product that has integrity are really, it's so much. And then, you know, you get into like, okay, fine, you'll create a vertical kind of factory so that you can have control over the thing, but how much money that costs. And then, you know, it was basically a question of either get into stores like Urban Outfitters with your product or, you know, and lose 35% of the quality, or don't. And those are the issues of integrity and the quality and all that kind of stuff. But I do think for many entrepreneurs out there, you're thinking or you're working or you have already created a product. It's a big set of things if you're going to maintain kind of a consistency and an integrity around it. And if you want to scale it and you want to get investment, and it really is it's a whole situation. And then obviously the products go bad and that thing, you know, there's just so many things. So so you basically took over a factory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations. That's awesome.
At one point, I was USDA organic certified. That was in the very beginning, that one product.
Yeah.
And then relinquished it because I couldn't keep products on the shelf without them being, basically people were opening them and they would be moldy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, ugh. So at that point, I actually even had to do a name change and changed it to Veridatta, coming from the word verdad, truth. So at that point, I just made this promise. I was like, okay, I'm not going to have the USDA organic label, but I'm going to just stick to my word here. And so, yeah, all of a sudden I have like, this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't think about this unless you're really in the product kind of scene, and then how much it's a big, and this is why people don't do it. And so Gary Vee says, I'm going to give you 18 ideas. I don't have people sign NDAs, or I'm not worried about that, because who among you are going to execute anything that I've said? Because if you can actually execute something, then you deserve it. And the same, if you've created a product and this is hard. And Pratima, my friend Pratima, who's a big, she has a big product line and whatever, she still mixes every single product herself. That is it. And of course, it's like, well, what's going to happen when she can't do that anymore? So these things, you're really looking at it's a unique thing.
And that's where the big win comes from. So we invested in a company called Hint Water.
Yeah.
About 15 years ago. I met the founder, and she was a mother of 4 kids, and she didn't want them drinking anything with like artificials and sugar, and so she started mixing fruit into water. And everybody in the neighborhood and all the moms were calling her like, how did you make that blueberry raspberry water? Like, my kids love it. They kept talking about it. And so she and her husband set on this path to create the first sort of non-artificial, like, good but tasteful water, and it was Hint. But it was the same thing. They came across all these boundaries where it's like, no, it can't be done. It couldn't be pasteurized in a way that would let it sit on the shelves long enough. So they had to do these scientific breakthroughs. And that was the secret sauce. Like, once they got that, it was a competitive advantage. It was a huge challenge, but they did it. They figured out a way to not heat, just enough of whatever the science was to change the game. And now they're like the biggest #1 drink in their category. They're the biggest independent beverage that's not owned by PepsiCo or any of those companies. And they have no sugar, no artificials, all this commitment to this mission. Mm-hmm. But it hasn't been easy. And we've been there every step of the way. And it wasn't like the biggest return on investment yet, but some people invest and they're thinking like, I want the return in 3 years, so you got to make those compromises. I think we have to get good about what we invest in and have different metrics for success. So if you're the powerful VC, and I would pick your product over something that might have a faster, quicker bottom line of higher profit. But this is where we've got to fix the end result, as investors with pocketbooks, where we say, I'm going to pick that product, even though it yields less profit, but it yields a greater good to society, and just have different metrics for what we think of as successful companies.
I watched this investment panel. I've been talking about this a lot, where they had kind of some old school, like a VC guy, and then but there's 2 kind of banker type VC hedge fund guys, and then a woman who was an entrepreneur, had a product, and who sold the company eventually, after 20 years. We're talking where your friends are, in that 15 to 20 years. This is a child, and so this idea that we can turn a profit or turn a company over and sell it, this is very rare that happens. It's literally an anomaly, and I think just to shift the neurology. But the VC guys were kind of uncomfortably, shifting in their seat, talking about, well, we don't know anymore because there's this brand value thing because of social media and some of the narrative that brands have, and how the consumer values the brand because of their social entrepreneurship and because of some of the narrative of how it's giving back, and so that the bottom line or the EBITDA is not where we want it to be, however, this brand currency. And so it's even starting to leak into the VC world, where they're getting that it's like the world's changing. And so, but I agree with you. I think one of the big, and of course my intention at Rama and creating, what we're going to be creating as Rama Business Group is an investment fund that basically has these types of ethos, so that we can start to invest. I mean, it's my greatest intention, that we start to invest in businesses that we know are going to maybe take some time, and then we're willing to be a think tank and a support vehicle for that to happen. But I do think it is changing, because even to see those guys kind of like, uncomfortably talking about brand value and not really knowing what it is and why the consumer values it, I think, so I'm excited. I feel like I know it was a moment of like, oh, okay, things are, that was like these are Londoners, London VC type of,
It's like it's so simple, the reason why it works. It's just the fact that no one understands it is because it's a bunch of like middle-aged men who have just been controlling everything, and they don't understand how raw talent or how inspiration really works.
yeah,
It's very
exactly.
simple.
And it's very and you can see the threat, the threat of that, but we know that that's coming down the pike. And so you either, and this was kind of my conversation with those people, is like, you either get with the program or you're going to be out of a job, because we have a major thrust of an economic kind of demand by the millennial generation and the Gen Z, that this is going to be of a demand of that this has to happen. So, yeah.
I mean, we see. It seems like almost monthly there's some large brand or corporation that does something that is socially irresponsible.
Yeah.
Whether it's putting something out that's racist,
Yeah.
saying that, having a statement, like, it happens all the time. And it's like, how come you didn't realize that before it was out? And it's because, as you were saying, the people that are there, making these decisions, they don't see it.
Right.
They're totally disconnected. And that's one of the things in Come Up that makes the value so great for those that participate in that come, because you're able to get your product, whatever it is, directly from the person creating it. You know where it's coming from, the intention behind it. Mm-hmm. And it just really raises the vibration of, it raises the vibration of the consumer. It raises the vibration of the whole, just everything. It's just like, when you see the importance of helping other people, being socially responsible, there's nothing more valuable than that. And then now with social media, I mean, as soon as you put anything out that's negative or not thought about, everyone knows about it and you're boycotted.
Yeah.
And it's just not, like, who wants that?
Well, you bring up a very important point, which is that I believe that fiat currency and just the currency of exchange and the NASDAQ and these kind of, friends of mine are working on a whole new kind of NASDAQ, which will be of exchange of cryptocurrency. And it's going to be quite an interesting shift. But the whatever currency kind of exchange that will be developed in these it's going to happen in the next 7 years. Many different layers and levels of currency exchange are going to start to be a part of, because basically we understand that the currency of exchange in a marketplace like that is different than the currency of exchange in some of these kind of dilapidated patriarchal structures there, and because the environment of the new economic thrust is that they won't exchange currency in that way. This is why these types of creating these types of kind of economic revolutions are so important, because you're basically educating people to understand that you actually can exchange currency in a different way, which means that the fiat currency values in a different way, which is no longer going to be oil based, and there's going to be a lot of shift around this. But this is what's happening, and it's coming very, very, very quickly, and we don't have to be scared of it, because really when you go into your communities and you go into your how you can create a sphere of influence that makes a difference, this is you can start to educate people on what exchange looks like in this new age, which I think is going to look very, very different and continue to shift and change. So any comment on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I used to work in a big public company, and it was called Ascent Media, and it was on the stock exchange, and it was fascinating because I had to report to the board, and the board was always all older white men, and in a lot of environments I was in, I was like the only woman, and I remember they wanted to be innovative, right? So I would come up with these new innovative things. Like, so instead of taking the film canister of the final film on a plane in a seat in first class across to Paris. Like, what if we utilize this new fiber technology and create something like, there was a company out there called Smart Jog, where you could like put this really big content securely through fiber or through satellite instead of having to, and they still carry the canisters, like just really simple innovations. And we spent all this time building out the plan and hiring the team and and then we get to the board meeting and the quarterly results for earnings were a little light. So the first thing they did was just like, well, cut that $15 million new innovation thing. And it was like, you do all this work, but just to get to the quarterly results. Like the problem is the way that companies are set up for, and the CEOs and their compensation packages, and the distance of wealth. Like, and with no regulation, some of these companies are getting away with murder, and their CEOs are making $97 million annually, and they're freezing bonuses on the workforce. I mean, look at Uber, for example. Uber has a workforce that is just contracted labor. There's no full-time employees, there's no health care, there's no benefits. These are people all day driving, and they're contractual employees. Now, when Uber goes public, all the people at the top are gonna make, millions, billions, and the workforce that the entire service of Uber is built on will not participate in that wealth at all. And so there's a think tank of some very smart billionaire types, Nick Hanauer being one of them, who's out in the country trying to raise the minimum wage and successfully passing laws all over the country to do that. The think tank is actually going to Uber, and a lot of these people are on the board, and they're saying, what if you hire all your employees and give them health care and give them benefits and make them part of the company? You will beat Lyft. You will have a positive response from employee. You will have to spend billions of dollars doing it, but it'll be worth it in the long term. Maybe not short-term quarterly earnings and certain old school metrics, but even, like you said, the shift is happening because even the board members are coming up with the math to present to the company to say, this is probably your only chance at survival long term. Now, short term, Uber, that guy that started it was just like, he was a mess, right? Everybody bet on him because he was that kind of guy that was like sort of sociopathic, and you knew you could count on him to like win. Yeah. But he's been kicked out, like he was so irresponsible and made so many mistakes and sexually, I mean, I don't even remember like all the things that he did that were so bad. But it's so funny when you talk to those guys that used to invest in those guys. Now they're like, sure, it worked for the short term, but long term, we might not win. And that huge investment and all that money I put into Uber might not return on the investment. And so we integrity? Yeah, let's think about it. Long-term integrity, the way we treat the workforce, not having an uprising and a revolt of,
on social media.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because that's really what's creating.
Delete the app, It's so quick for us to make those changes, not just with our pocketbook, but our choices. You take a company off your investments because you're like, I don't believe in McDonald's, and I don't believe in that oil company, and I don't want to invest in any of that, even if it's a huge portfolio. So, and then it's just as simple as, do I download the app or not? And it is an awesome time of democratization of buying power, because the gatekeepers are limited, and it's really up to us what we want to get behind. And so the more you buy those products, even though they may be a little more expensive, but it's going to be better for you in the long term. The results are better. You investing in local companies that are touching the community and building their own wealth in that place and then keeping it there. Like those are the kind of decisions we all get to make now. Yeah. And we're incredibly powerful.
Yes. Yeah, and I think more and more that the piercing through of the what has kept women out, or people of color out, or any aspect of marginalization around really prosperity. I feel it's our job as leaders to pierce the veil of that in any way we possibly can, and our job as influencers and business people to pierce the veil of that, because that really is going to demand for a new experience of prosperity on the planet, which I believe that this time on the planet is the most prosperous time. We're just coming into the most prosperous and resourceful time that we've ever known in at least the past 26,000 years. And so it really is about all of us as change makers to be, keeping that at the forefront of our missions. I would like to, as you started, get some questions from the audience. Can we get the room mic, Adele? Okay, great. She's coming around. Let me just take the one behind you, and then we'll grab you.
Michelle? Is Michelle? You're the...
I'm Ty.
Ty?
Sorry. Yeah, just Ty.
Okay, I'm sorry. So Ty, you said every year you bring in 10 activists. Are they the artists? Are they the employees? Are they both?
We're kind of keeping a separate, so the artists, all of our artists are activists, but now we're just going to invest and build cohorts of non-artist type, like boots on the ground, whether it be like a chef that's changing with their food, or a young woman that I met who started something called Period and wrote a book and is changing like this notion of what menstrual health should be, or one of the Parkland kids, or think about different people. It can be for profit. They can be activists that have for profit models. But they're not, we're keeping that a little separate from the musician activists, although what I want to do ultimately is team up like a John Legend with a criminal justice activist over here, which is what we've done. We've done that. But I want to do that with, Lindsay Sterling teaming up with somebody who's working on mental health, and let the big power musicians also lift the voices and vice versa, and teach and train each other. So I read this quote by Nina Simone. You guys probably have heard this, but I'm going to read it because I read it yesterday, and it's so powerful. She was saying that, an artist's duty is to reflect the times. And I feel like all of my artists and all of the artists that I talk to are like, I want to jump in it, but I don't know how. Well, how better than to pair, somebody who's like in it all day and grassroots on the ground, and then have the artist elevate that person. So it's like, oh, you want John Legend for a TED conversation? You can have him, but only if you give the 15-minute TED talk to this young prosecutor who you've never heard of before. And we can get that done all day long. Yeah. People say yes. So we leverage our access and power and our voice to open the door for somebody who's really doing some great work and who needs to be elevated.
Yeah.
So the ultimate output of that in your vision might be what? What is the expectation?
Well, we've started building out the business model. So you start with some assumptions, like A bucket activist is making like $0 to $100,000 a year. B bucket activist, we're going to get them from $500,000 to like $1 million a year. And C bucket activist is like making movies, changing the world, like 1 to 10 million in terms of revenue. And so each one of those has a different level of, there's a revenue business model bottom line goal for it. If there's an embarrassment of riches, we come up with regulations of like, how do you put that money back into the issue? Exactly. Rather than, go crazy in terms of 7 houses or 5 Teslas or whatever, So that's where I think you need the regulation. But all the gray area, whenever anybody gets like scared of like, oh no, this might go bad, it's like, just think of the middle ground. Like, get comfortable with the thing in the middle. That's not the like crazy egoic activist who loses his mind and just has way too much wealth, or communism versus like full-on capitalism. There's like a middle ground, and we just have to constantly aim for that and hold each other accountable for it. I look at you. You're like a hugely successful like activist, spiritual leader, and an entrepreneur. Like, I can't wait to see how much money you're gonna make off the line and all the things you're doing, but I know I trust you to like guardrail it. Like, the last thing I imagine is like you driving 10
Rolls Royce.
Yeah. But
wild drama.
Invite me on the yacht when you have the yacht in Greece. I want to go. Like Geffen's always inviting like Scooter and all the guys on the yacht. I'm like, where's our fucking yacht?
Seriously.
Where's our private jet? Like, yo, ladies, like, we deserve some wealth too. And I have no issue if you want to own the yacht. Like, go get the yacht. Yeah. But chances are you're going to be investing in a lot of good nonprofit shit too. So. Yeah.
It looks to me, though, that are you employing or using the Rama Institute as there's a synergy, right? There's a synergy that happens when you're bringing all these different influences together.
Well, I invited these people on the panel because I
Right.
believe in everything that they're doing, and that's why they're here.
So are you becoming the wheelhouse? Or are you becoming the, do you see where I'm going with this? Is there a-
Not particularly, but yes, we are creating Rama Business Group, which will be a investment hedge fund and a way to kind of start to bring, in innovation labs, but that'll be a part of our university as well. Okay, other questions? Yes. You want it. Here, you have to talk into the microphone.
Okay, I just want to say things. Can I just add to the space?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
To a degree.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I just thought it was really important what you were saying a moment ago before we branched off and you brought in like the change of currency and what are we going to do. You made a comment about how online it's very easy for people to get shot down for doing things that are like, racist or this or whatever. And it reminded me of how and I feel like this is so important, especially just for like when it comes to doing business and existing as a human, that it's really bad how we're literally programmed to like take differences and to be like, well, just don't talk about it, or like just don't say anything, like don't hurt anybody, but like that's not gonna bring the conversation about. And like I just thought it was important to like harp on that. So yeah. I thought that was sick.
I think social media is a great leveler. It's really creating, and it is very much this kind of a prophecy of this age that we're in, is that you're peer reviewed all the time, which can be also a house of mirrors and can keep you from wanting to make the mistakes, but kind of not get in the conversation. But I think it is important.
The biggest thing we need to do is stop being so afraid of like offending each other and hurting each other, and just like start saying what it is we feel, and then like when you go with it more and you speak to each other, you're going to find out like, oh, this person's authentic, or oh, what this person does is valid because they have integrity.
Yeah.
So like we have to start breaking down those walls, because really the small amount of people that have been in charge have just been working for decades to make us fear each other. So really we think that we're getting to the problem, but we're just shutting each other up because we're afraid that we're going to say the wrong thing.
Yeah, and this is really, I think, a great example, and thank you for commenting on there is the inner kind of structures that we carry, and this is why I work a lot with women, because we're everyone is carrying the trespasses of the patriarchy. Yeah. And if we're not doing our inner work, then we're going to continue to recapitulate that. So it's really important. Thank you for bringing that up. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, guys. First of all, it's really inspiring to be here, so thank you so much. I guess my question is quite personal. I have 5 years in the music industry. I was JLo's brand manager. I spent the last year and a half not able to work because I'm Canadian, because of Trump. I wasn't able to get a visa. Started producing a TV show with my fiance, who's a white Jewish kid from New Jersey who's staffed on a TV show. We created a TV show. It's like Friends in therapy, basically, Breakfast Club in therapy, and we're trying to sell it right now. And we keep hitting these doors where, we're getting married this year, so I'll be able to work finally. But he's a young white Jewish kid, and everyone is saying, I'm not going to buy a TV show from a young white Jewish kid anymore, even if we're making something that's really important, because we're only doing hires we're only working with people that are making content that is different. And so I guess it's a twofold question, right? So it's like the brand world, the music, the entertainment world, it's difficult. What was your first steps? Because I'm really interested in hearing people's stories. And the second is like, how do we stay conscious but also stay in line, where we're not pushing people out, we're bringing people in, and we're still being responsible, and we're still including everybody?
I'd like to start. Kundalini yoga. And I'm not paid to say that, but I really do genuinely say that the times in which I have hit the biggest walls, and like walls that blew me away, like blew parts of my life away, that I'd be like, oh my God, what am I gonna do now? And I knew I had to keep going, because I didn't see it as a choice. I was like, I just gotta grab what's left and keep going. But those periods of time were when I was the most almost lost, if you will. Like, I wanted it so bad that I was willing to do anything for it, and that's when you're in trouble. And so, like, it's kind of been a rebuild for me throughout this whole brand process of just, like, coming into real understanding and trust and, like, kind of, like, softening within myself. And then with that, the doors open, you know? So, you know, I know what you mean with doors shutting in your face, but, like, the more you and your fiance that can just like forget the whole storyline of your company and what you're doing and everything, and it's just like get back into like who you are, like like what's going on in there, and then the rest works itself out.
You want to talk about?
I mean, I would just say, just like, stay true to yourself. Yeah. Like, there's always going to be someone, some person, something, some entity telling you you're not good enough, we don't want this isn't great, you need to do this, you need to do that. But what do you want to do? What is your purpose? What do you want to put out into the world? Just focus on that, because if you continuously focus on what other people want from you, it's going to muddle up your whole entire existence. You know, just do what you want to do.
Also, there's just an illusion of scarcity that keeps us all thinking that there's not enough of a pie, and so I got to hold all my pie. That's what happened to women in the music business in a big way. Like, women were just like, oh no. Like Alanis Morissette, who I work with, she when she made it, like Joni Mitchell, PJ Harvey, all these women in the business were like putting her down, which was fascinating. It bummed me out when I heard these stories, and I was like, yeah, but that was the patriarchy. Like, everybody thought if you were the one woman that made it, that then you were somehow going to steal my pie. And now I think women are starting to heal and grow from that, and realizing like this illusion of scarcity that kept us competing with each other is just, and so yes, I mean, I get it. Like, it may not be super in vogue to like invest in the white guy's version of a TV show, but like, I just think that's a faulty illusion. Like, maybe one person said that to you, but I don't think you're going to find that in most. Really? They actually came out and said that? That's fascinating. Well, look, you know, there are trends and things that we're like, I could bring a show somewhere and they're like, we're just, that show's just not popular right now. Or you know, and that's okay. And the cool thing is now more than ever, you can shoot, edit, put up your own content. So like the gatekeepers that used to tell you whether you could put, you know, a song out or you it's not, that's been, the playing field is getting leveled. Like, some of my favorite content creators are, you know, YouTube stars who have 13 million subscribers to their content, like Lindsay Sterling. And nobody wanted to sign Lindsay. Nobody wanted to put her on TV. She's a violinist. It wasn't cool. Like, whatever. Like, everyone shut the door in her face. And she's like, well, I'm just going to find a way to get it out to people. And it worked. And now she's one of the biggest artists in the world. She sells more albums than John Legend. So, you know, and she still is not signed to a record label and still does not have a publishing company. And because of all that, she makes more of the profit. So like the business model, when you go direct and figure out how to build your own fan base, like, don't let anything stop you, right? There's no illusion of scarcity. There's nobody gatekeepering you out. And yes, Kundalini, and then yes, you will find oddly that success starts happening and these things start blossoming for you.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, there's nothing wrong with, I feel like we're working with trends, and we're working with people at the top who are still holding power positions that are not particularly of the necessarily. I think it's changing of, you know, some of the most expanded consciousness, especially in things like Hollywood and these types of things. So you're working still in kind of this model of this old way of thinking and being and doing. So we have a swing of the pendulum that's happening right now, but I also feel like, you know, if you really look at what you're doing on the planet as a journey of you and you, then there's nothing. It's a good day to die. It's a good day to be rejected. It's a good day, and also to have rejection because of, you know, some of the current issues. It's a power pendulum that has swung that isn't bad, because what's going to happen is we're going to unpack a lot of the privilege and supremacy that has been happening and that people have been building on, you know, sub and unconsciously in the, you know, different communities, including Hollywood, is a huge part of that kind of privilege, power playing in all sorts of different ways. And then that pendulum's going to swing, and there's going to be a lot more stories being told that are really of substance and have nothing, you know, all of those other aspects will be not as important, but it's going to create, and it's also going to create people creating new media companies. I mean, this is why I did it. It's like you want something done, you create your own thing. And there's in this age of technology, no one has a handicap to create something unless they don't have Wi-Fi, which there are people on the planet that don't have cellular service or Wi-Fi. Those people are the only people, I believe, on the planet that actually are truly unable to build something that is, you know, beyond what they could do even 20, 30 years ago. So the playing field is wide open if you're willing to do the work. And, you know, who needs somebody to buy your thing? Like, do we need it to be that way anymore? That's the question. But it's going to take people to really put in the sleeplessness, spend all their money, cash in their 401k. I mean, this is what every entrepreneur's story is. It's like, I put everything on the line and another couple $100,000 of debt to, or whatever the story is, you know, so to make the thing that I believed strongly in. Can we, Chase? Do I have, Adele, can you?
I was wondering, so Ty and then what was your name in the middle? Ferriss mentioned that you studied business in school, and I'm curious, what if there was any value of studying these things, even if it's from a perspective that's within the old model and from that old model, and also if there was what's the other point of education that you've found in how to run a business? How did you learn?
Well, for me, I feel like I have an expensive piece of paper and a frame and student loan debt. I didn't really learn anything about actually running or doing business until I actually worked. The place where I learned the bulk of, or have the bulk of my experience in, I worked at a startup. So I was one of the first 6 people there. I was the office manager, everything. I did the payroll, I did the bookkeeping, I helped do the onboarding, I bought stuff for engineers, I did the lunches, I did everything from the start. I helped make the employee manual. That's what helped me. That's what helped me to know how to do things. And then my work life, I worked in accounting firms, I worked in places that helped me learn the path. But just learning isn't really how can I say this? Learning and getting the knowledge and doing the work is one thing, but then everyone can't be an entrepreneur. You know, it's not just I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I can do this. It's fun. Everyone doesn't want to make the sacrifices. Everyone doesn't want to take the time, and you just have to really be a student of it through doing it and actually wanting to, and realizing that you're going to have to make sacrifices. You know, your return on investment things you talked about, they might not even come as, you said, they might not come in 10 years. They might not come, but maybe they'll come for your family later, or maybe they'll come from you inspiring other people. There are other ways where you can get benefit and feel successful in that. But I have a business degree, I like it. I think about sometimes should I get an MBA? And then I'm well, do I want to have more student loan debt? And we've seen all the different stories of people who are successful without having these. You have to have a degree. You have to have this. It is helpful, when you're, in a regular workforce. It's helpful, but if you want to do something yourself, just do it and utilize what you have right now in front of you. Don't think that you need I need to have this in order to do that. I had to, change my mindset. In the last couple of years, I've done a lot of work on myself and changing my mindset about thinking, well, oh, damn, I can't do that. I don't have this. I don't have a graphic designer. I don't have this. And it's like, no, what do I have in front of me? And most of us have our phone. These phones are amazing. Yes. They're better than computers. I was born in 81. We didn't have all those things. And then, you can just research anything. I had to go to school and go encyclopedia. You have a media package right there in your phone. You have cameras, you have videos, you have access to so many things. If you want to do it, just do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was 20 years ago that I got my MBA. I had worked in the dot-com tech world in Philadelphia after college, and all of that crashed in 99. And I remember thinking, I don't have the skills to save these companies. I didn't know how to read a P&L. I didn't really understand enough of the. I had taken some econ courses in undergrad, but I was an English major, and so for me, it was dot-com world crashed. I couldn't save all these great entrepreneurial ventures. I want to know more. And when I got into Wharton, it was 2 years master's program, and it was not easy for me. I mean, these were guys, it was mostly male population. I think the women were about 25-30% of the class. And a lot of these men came from Wall Street and were getting the Wharton MBA because it was another check on the box. And so for me, it was a very uncomfortable, weird place. I was the artist in business school. But I have to say, it gave me a level of confidence and access to a certain kind of job. It got me to Seattle and then to LA and multi-six-figure, job type jobs that I had because I had the Wharton MBA. It was all of a sudden people just assume oh, you cut the line, you get the job. Yep. $250,000 a year later, I'm having huge salaries, but I was not happy. Mm-hmm. And I was on an airplane coming back in 2005 from Seattle, and a giant hole opened up in the plane. And the mast came down and the wind was whisking. We were at 27,000 feet right over Mount Rainier, and that was it. I was like, this is it. I hadn't met you, but I was listening to Wah at the time. And the only thing that went through my head was my grandmother who had passed, and Wah. And I just kept I was if there's any way I can keep this plane afloat. And within about 10 minutes, we had rapidly declined, and we had emergency landing, and the ambulances and the fire trucks, and it was all over the news. And I went into my big job at the big public company that week, and I quit because I was I made a promise to something when we were going down that I would live vitally from that point on. And so the business degree got me to a certain point, but that was the week that I called my old friend John Stevens from college, who became John Legend. And then I moved to New York, and we started a company together. And then, so, for me, the business degree was helpful, but it wasn't the end all. You still gotta and it took me years to pay off the debt. I mean, it really was a 10-year burden of even with the big income, it's a lot of money to pay for those degrees. Nowadays, there's online courses. You can take a Harvard Business School class online for a fraction. And I did not get something out of the networking. I don't have any friends from Wharton. Not one. Not one. They write me all the time, when are you going to give back to the annual fund? I'm not now, never. Sorry, Wharton. No, so, that's where Trump went too. So it's that's an old school model of access gatekeeper. I think it's been disrupted. I think you can learn everything you would want to learn for a fraction of the cost in an environment that's much more suited to you, that probably has a better assumptions behind the economics models of what we want to create. There was only one ethics class in that whole, and this was when Enron was happening and a million bad things are happening, and all those people went to those schools. It's amazing how out of sync and out of touch the lessons are there.
And I think academia is starting to feel the burn of that. That was my experience at Harvard Business School last month, is they're trying to figure out how to keep up with, and, so they're having me come. And I have a degree in, humanities, a bachelor's degree that took me 15 years because I was busy building my businesses. This is so.
Harvard Business School.
Yeah.
I love that.
So something is they're trying to figure out how do we educate a new model that we don't even understand and that we're not living. And so I think it's going to be a really interesting time, which is why I'm so happy about Rama Business School, because I do think it's going to require new educators, new disruptors, new innovations to actually keep up with what is being required by your generation, and how your generation is going to monetize is nobody really knows. It's going to be, this is all coming in the next couple of years. I'm really excited to watch this. Thank you all so much for being here. This is a really interesting conversation. Thank you, thank you. And I think you'll be interested to meet a woman who's going to be teaching at Rama Business School next weekend, who is a friend of mine who did the same thing as you, but is, I think, a little further on the process. She created her own factory and is now selling it for $24 million this month.
I remember you mentioning her, and I was like, yeah.
And she created, she was basically a teen mother she has three children, and built this thing, and so it completely self-made. It's taken her 25 years. I mean, these are the kinds of things, but she's actually coming to teach because she just sold the business, and she really feels like she has something to offer. So I think you'll enjoy that. And Ferriss, thank you so much for everything that you're doing and for coming and being with us, and we're really excited. You guys have an event coming up on the 28th of April.
Yeah, it's April 28th. It's in the Arts District in downtown LA. It's at a place called Awa Oasia. It used to be called The Springs, if any of you are familiar with that. So it's the same place. That's our event space, and it's you can find us like on Instagram, Come Up LA, and you can like see all the things, all the vendors, all the.
It looks really, really cool.
It's just such a, I don't know. When we started, I had no idea like the impact that it would have, and how so many people like come to me and like ask me all these questions now, and like are so inspired. When people are inspired by me, I'm like, whoa, I'm just Ferriss, doing what I like to do. Mm-hmm. But
it makes all the sacrifice go away.
Because I was up last night till like 2, sending out emails trying to get the vendors, that I was like, okay, I got to do this.
Herding cats.
But like, so come through, support, share, spread it around. Like I said, it's not about exclusion, but it's just about my community trying to better ourselves and not excluding anyone as well.
What's your Instagram handle too?
Veridatta Collection.
You'll see all these really hot pictures of Rebecca with really glowy skin, as you can see in person. It's real. And Ty, how do we find you? How do we contribute? How do we know more?
The company's called Friends at Work. If you want to follow us, I think that's probably, we're on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm just my name, Ty Stikoloris, which is really hard to spell, so just find me later. But yeah, I want to support all of you. I want to know about those earrings and your thing, and I want to buy the skincare, and I want to get your dress, and if you've got the buying power, go and spend it on your friends and the people and the products of entrepreneurs that you fall in love with, and that's.
It makes such a difference. I mean, just to the point where I'll see people in our retail, and basically they're looking at the books and they're buying them on Amazon, like standing in the shop, which is totally fine. And I encourage people to do that. But it makes a difference. To small business owners, a couple dollars for selling a book makes a difference to whatever else. But these are the economic choices we have at our fingertips, literally in every minute of every day. And I'm really pissed that Amazon has put all these bookstores out of business and now is opening bookstores. That's wrong. And Walmart has put all these, small kind of towns out of business, and now they're buying the real estate and rebuilding the small towns, which I actually think is an interesting idea. But this is it's an artificial way of going about. So you have a choice in every moment. So bless you all, and we'll continue these conversations. This is our season here to talk about. We always talk about this stuff, but particularly about we're calling it the neurology of a trailblazer. So the programming on Rama Business School will start on Thursday, and then we'll take it all weekend and all sorts of different talks and conversations. And we are going to do kind of like a Rama Shark Tank with the entrepreneurs and people who are here, the creatives who are in the course. I have a really interesting panel of people, and you're going to present your idea, and we're going to give you feedback on it, because you don't get a chance to get real, true feedback from people who have maybe some perspectives that you're not thinking about. So a lot coming up, and then also our 6th birthday on Friday night. So join us for any of that. People know who are entrepreneurs. The 6th birthday is kind of like, whew, okay, although they tripled our rent here. So, but these are the things you got to face, tripled. So, which of course I was like ignoring because I was looking at the numbers differently, and Joanna sat me down. She's like, no, they've tripled our rent. I was looking at it a little bit in a more positive way. Like, look, we get to, contribute to the community more. But these are the things you're up against. So even though we're 6 years in, this is what we're facing. So keep going. We love you. We believe in you. Satnam.
Satnam.